What's up, guys? It's your boy Jamaica here, coming at you with another deck tech. This is my mono blue STIFLENOUGht deck. This is the deck I decided to play in the PD 500, and I guess I won't spoil the result, but I did well. I think I did pretty well. I really actually enjoy the archetype as a whole. Throughout the season, or maybe throughout like the history of Penny Dreadful, I've only probably played some like one or two other seasons, but I've done pretty well. We can kind of cheat out a 12-12 really early and protect it. It's pretty good. It's actually really good. And the inclusion of this season with Delver of Secrets kind of makes it a really like pseudo tempo deck. So yeah, I just want to make this video and go through my like thoughts and processes of it, and let's just go. Islands, only 18 islands. People that like to play like Brainstorm a lot like to play like fetch lands. I'm not really a big fan of that. And I didn't want to play any sort of like tap lands to start. This deck is very um most games end by like turn 3 or 4, I would say, or like you have a position where you need at least like 3 to 4 lands untapped all the time. So I mean, playing those like tap lands like Bad Rivers, Evolving Wilds, whatever, what have you, is it's just like not strong. Even like Mystic Sanctuary, you could say, oh, you could play as like one of, two of. It's like in the late game, but really, it's not worth it. It's not worth it when you're just trying to kill your opponent on turn 3. Um, it's you just want like untapped islands, and also you need basic islands for Tempest Gen, which is kind of like the backup win condition. Delver Secret's pretty awesome throughout the annals of time. Delver has been pretty great ever since Innistrad. Um, you're rewarded by playing a bunch of instants and sorceries, and this deck has plenty of them in different ways, whether it be counter magic or enablers for the Dreadnought or whatever what have you. Dreadnought's the other awesome one drop, but not really a one drop, more like a 3 drop, because all your other sort of things that enable the Dreadnought will cost like 2 mana. So maybe it's just like a 3 mana 12/12, which is still pretty good. um, it's relevant in a lot of different ways. One, it's like colorless, so things like Affinity can't really like push through it with net champion and kind of stop that. Although I guess like things with platings can kind of be really annoying, but um yeah, and it's just like super cheap. It's just most like aggro decks in their first game cannot kill this creature. Like heroic mono red, and that was like kind of the big reason I wanted to play this deck, was that a lot of people just don't have main deck answers to a 1 mana 12/12 outside of things maybe like black. Basically, I wanted to play against every non-black deck, and against black decks, it'd been an uphill battle because they have things like Heartless Act, or maybe just like Heartless. Like some people even play like Angrass Rampage, which is like destroys an artifact. I'm like, are you kidding me? So, um, yeah, like outside of those matchups, outside of the black base matchups, I think every other matchup I felt really good in, because 1 mana 12/12 is really strong. Even strong against things like Storm, where they kind of, if they don't have a repeal, you can kind of just like go off on them before they can kind of go off. Tempest Gen is kind of like the backup player. If you want to think of like old, like blue white Delver decks of like old standards past, they had their Delvers, and then they had their like Snapcaster Mages as kind of like win conditions, and I played a lot of Delver back then, and then they had Gangsta Trap, which was one of my favorite cards of all time. Tempest Gen is almost fills that slot. Being like an X4 is pretty good against like red base removal. They can't really kill it with one single spell, so it takes a little bit. And honestly, like in the late game, it's you're kind of trying to kill these like small drops with like burst lightnings, whatever, just figures. And then all of a sudden, a Tempest Gen comes out of nowhere, and you kind of just die to it. So once you tend to untap with it and just kind of like flood out with a bunch of islands, it can close the game pretty fast. It's really good. I found it actually really good, surprisingly really good. I only played 3 because I had to make room for some other non-instant sorcery creature stuff, but I thought 3 was the correct number. I always wanted to see 1, and because of like the strong card drawing between like Brainstorm and Ponder, you could always find 1 when you needed it. It was never like the main plan, but I could see like playing 4 over like maybe like the second Greaves, but that was really the cut. It was either like the second Greaves or the second Dizzy Spell, but honestly, I thought 3 was like fine. I thought it was just pretty much fine to me. So you're probably wondering now why, how can you get beyond the drawback of Dreadnought? And there's kind of just 8 ways to do it. actually 12. 12-ish. Well, there's a billion ways to do it, but in our deck we have 8 ways to do it. The first being Renegade Doppelganger, the other creature in the deck. A lot of people actually go for Eldrazi Mimic, and I politely disagree. While Eldrazi Mimic is good at being a 2/1 baseline, it doesn't get one big upgrade, which is having Trample. Renegade Doppelganger copies the creature exactly to the T, so it's a 1 mana 12/12. The Eldrazi Mimic only takes the power of toughness of the colorless creature, so it's a little bit more versatile in the sense of like, okay, I have this bear, I need to attack, but I think the good thing about Doppelganger is that it also copies Tempest Gen, which can be useful in a pinch when you're trying to just kind of like when you're like a Doppelganger plan isn't really strong, you can or I'm sorry, your Dreadnought plan is really strong. You can still kind of like ranking a Doppelganger, Tempest Gen, and just kind of like get in there like that. So this guy was pretty strong overall. Just copying the creature, making 12/12. Repudiate, not replicate, just repudiate. It's just a stifle. It's basically stifle for 2 mana. This is the Penny Dreadful way. When you sometimes have the same kind of broken legacy cards, but instead they cost 1 more. But that is Penny Dreadful in a nutshell. And other than just like stifling the Dreadnought trigger, which is really great, you can stifle so many different things. The biggest one was like storm triggers. So if someone has lethal tendrils on you, you just stifle the storm trigger, and then all that work is for nothing. I've stifled battle cry triggers from Affinity. I've stifled. I remember in like a reanimator matchup, I stifled a Shriekhorn trigger because their only out was really just to get a creature in the graveyard and bring it out into play, and I stifled that. It was their last trigger. I There's so many possible. You can stifle like fetch lands. People love fetch lands. You can stifle that. I can stifle like a lightning rift trigger or activation. There's so many like silly things that you can stifle. So it's not just a useless card. It really is just a counterspell in some aspects. So just remember that activated triggered abilities are all over the place. So you just have to like use your brain and think about it. And but yeah, Stifle's awesome. I really like this deck. A lot of times I hardly cut this card just because it was so versatile. Just random matchups where you don't even like think about it. Even like mono red, you could stifle like a Barbring. That's just like something silly. You could stifle an Earthshaker Kendra Eternalize activation. Those are like things you can do, and like other cards couldn't even like deal with it. Stifle's just like good. um the other way of just kind of finding all the masses, Brainstorm and Ponder. It's been like the polarizing kind of like 2 card combo. We've never had like good like card drawing engines as in other formats or other seasons like this. Especially 1 mana cantrips. I think the best thing we had before this was Opt, and now we have like things like Probe, Gitaxian Probe rather, Brainstorm and Ponder and Opt. But I chose Brainstorm and Ponder. They both do basically the same thing, which is look at 3 cards. When you're kind of the pseudo combo deck, you kind of just really need to find what you need, find what you're looking for really fast. Um, Brainstorm's great at flipping Delvers. If you have another instant or sorcery in your hand, you go turn 1 Delver, turn 2 upkeep, trigger on the stack. You just Brainstorm, put the thing on top, and then you flip the Delver. And that's the strongest start. It's the best start you could kind of have as a Delver deck. So, like I said, I didn't have a lot of shuffle effects. I have 6 shuffle effects, 2 Dizzy Spell, and the Ponder here to kind of like um, shuffle away the worst cards in Brainstorm. There's definitely some times where you kind of just Brainstorm lock yourself. That's not a big deal. Um, but yeah, Ponder saves everything. I would keep almost any hand with like 1 mana and 1 Ponder, just because I knew I could just set up the rest of the game pretty well. So and I think I got pretty lucky in some aspects. And when you watch the PD 500 VOD, but Ponder is really good. It's actually, like I said, in that Delver standard season where I played it, I loved Ponder so much. It's a really strong card, and I have a lot of like fun experience with it. So, and the combination of Ponder and Brainstorm is just like really strong. You get to see so many cards, and it's really fun to have a powerful effect in Penny Dreadful like that. But I used to play Anticipate like unironically, and I can't go back now. I just can't go back. I'm seeing so many good cards for less mana. So um, we'll see if it stays the next season. Interaction here, Mana Leak, just a classic just counterspell Mana Leak. It's when you're doing so many like aggressive things so early, just simple Mana Leak is good enough. A lot of people also play Deprive. I don't really like Deprive that much because it kind of messes up the Tempest Gen plan, and I kind of want a lot of mana in the battlefield. Spell Pierce is the lone kind of like one of just three more in the sideboard. Mostly it's just for him decks. Getting himmed on the draw is really terrible. So just having like kind of a small answer to that is pretty good. And it's just like really necessary. And it's kind of like another dive down in the sense that it can't protect your creature for very cheap. So things like when you're on like turn like 3 or 4, maybe they have like a Heartless Act and they only have like 3 mana and you can just like Spell Pierce, things like that. Just like little things. It can hit a plating, um, but mostly it's just for him decks. I think it's just really for him decks, and it's just to help the sideboard transition a little better. Vapor Sag, a full 4 of. I think one of the more interesting and competitive decks coming into this tournament was like, is it Delver or just like, is it aggro in general with like Sprite Dragons and other Delvers? And I noticed a lot that they were really like high on interaction, but really low on protection. And the way I see Delver decks is that you're just trying you have so few threats, honestly. Like those Izzet decks maybe had like 12 to 15 threats total. Me too. I have like less. I have 11 threats. So I really just want to protect that one threat, and which you can see here with the dives we'll get to in a second. But on their flip side, that's the same thing on the other side. They need to protect their threats. So when you have this like 1 mana bounce spell that just like negates the entire process that they've gone through, especially when they're chaining spells with Sprite Dragons, things like that. It's just like super strong. Also, obviously, it's good against other creature decks like Heroic, Mono Red, even like unfortunately, this deck was kind of banned because of an anime dead bug, but World Gorger Dragon is it's really strong against that. Even just Reanimator in general, just Reanimator strategies, even just traditional Reanimator, that wasn't really like relevant. But you could just tempo people out, big creatures, maybe people that like post. Although if they don't have like enter the battlefield effects, you don't really want to do that. But it's just a really strong card. Also, just pings for one. The deck's just about like paper cuts too, and sometimes Affinity too. That's another creature deck, but any creature, obviously creatures is really strong, but especially in the Delver esque mirror, you want to see at least 1 or 2 Vapor Sags. So having the full 4 is really strong for me. Uh, Dive Down, also going back to that same point about kind of protecting your threats. Dive Down is just another counter spell, more or less, because the only thing that matters, honestly, is protecting your threats. Once you get one down, that's the game. You have to like ride that to the end. So Dive Down was really good in a lot of situations. I almost wanted to play like a one of Mythium Skin to kind of like split my things, but like because Mythium Skin is like an overload card that can protect all your threats, but I think they only came up like once, where it's like I wish I had Mythium Skin at this point, but it's okay. I really like that. Dive Down also gives a plus 0+3. I've done this in some matchups where people were actually able to block my 12/12, and I had to like increase its toughness by 3. So that part is not irrelevant at all. um, let's see, Dizzy Spell. So no one likes Dizzy Spell, and I don't know why. I think it's like one of the better cards in the deck. Just baseline -3, -0. When you're racing some people, and Delver, I think Delver decks are a lot about racing. Once you're like kind of you have your Delver down, you're not really care about anything else. You're just trying to like kill them. You're trying to dive down your guy. So this is kind of a fog. I've definitely fogged creatures and like especially in the like hyper aggro decks of like mono red, heroic, affinity, things like that. Sometimes you just fog them. You fog a creature for a turn, and that's just enough. It messes up the math a lot. But the big part is it's transmuting, and it's kind of like the reason why the cards even in the deck. Transmuting for 3, it tutors so many things. A big thing, obviously, try not cost 1. When you can have it sets up for like turn 4 kills really well because sometimes you have just like a doppelganger, maybe like 2 doppelgangers. Turn 4, you have 4 mana. You dizzy spell for a Dreadnought, and all of a sudden they're dead. Your opponent is dead. A lot of times, honestly, I would get like a Vapor Sag, it's aggro decks, if I wasn't just fogging them already, or a Dive Down to protect my threat, to continue killing my opponent, things like that. Um, I even like Daisy spelled once for a Delver just to block a creature, just to block a blinker creature at one point. So I think Daisy spell is pretty great. If you've ever looked at any of my decks throughout the history of Penny Dreadful, I love tutoring, and this was this is a great card. I have good experience with it, and I think it's really good. I know it's really good, but you should try it too. It's I think a lot of people just get kind of stuck in like certain ways about like, oh, this card's not good. 3 mana, 3 mana is so expensive, especially like, we do have like really efficient spells in Brainstorm Ponder, and this is so inefficient. But I mean, it works. It worked. It just works. I don't know how else to explain it. You have to like open your eyes. I think it's hard being a deck builder and having different ideas from than other people, and them just like completely dismissing them because they didn't try. They just don't think it's good because it's like expensive or whatever. But when it's good, it's good. I don't know what to tell you. Um, Open your eyes and try. Try before thinking about it. Like think about the possibilities before completely dismissing them. That's my that's my Disney spell argument. Just open your eyes a little bit. Expand your world because Penny Dreadful's a wide open format and you never know what's gonna happen. The last interesting card here is Lightning Greaves. This was a later edition. I didn't really try this at first, but I think I tried one when I was kind of grinding up the week before the PD 500. But this card is real. It's actually legit, and I wasn't. It's so bad. Like when you think about it, it doesn't flip a Delver. It doesn't like do anything really. It doesn't like kill your. It doesn't like attack. It doesn't. It does protect your threats. It's like another kind of dive down, so that's good. But the haste part is the really strong part, and the zero equips. You can set up a lot of interesting turn threes. Um, when you so basically we talked about Dreadnought being basically like a 3 drop, but this just speeds up the clock by one whole turn. So a typical turn could be like turn one Ponder, turn two Lightning Greaves, turn three Dreadnought Stifle, and equip attack for 12. All of a sudden you have this Shroud Haste 12/12 Trampler. Like how do you deal with that outside of an edict that's not a lot of people really played outside of black decks? But how do you actually deal with that? It's actually kind of insane. So um, especially in a field where I thought like baseline mono red, even like is it or like mono blue delvers, things like that. If they didn't have like an answer right there, they were dead, and it did help out a lot. Even like in some matchups where you kind of going long with Tempest Gen, just having like a shroud like 5/4 flyer was pretty good. Especially in those like kind of later games of mid range matchups where they're just relying on killing that thing, and just it's good at protecting your threats. So I really like Lightning Greaves. I think it's a reason why I got to kill like combo decks a bit faster because I got to speed up my whole clock by a turn. So I was not a believer at first, but then I tried one and I drew the one, and then it was insane. So I added the second one over a Tempest Gen. That was really the cut. I cut a Tempest Gen for the second Greaves, and I haven't regretted it at all. I think it's an awesome card. Sideboard is it's a pretty interesting. It's mostly based around Dizzy Spell in general, but for the most part, it's just like a bunch of ideas that um I found out over time. I played about like 20 matches, I think, before the turn, leading up to the tournament, like the week up to the tournament. So I think I had a pretty idea of like what my good matchups were, what my bad matchups are. And if you've heard listened to this video at all, my bad matchups are black decks. So the sideboard's mostly geared around beating the black decks. I could just like top of that sideboard part right now. So basically, especially black red mid range, or just kind of like black X mid range X in general, I would basically bring in a bunch of unsubstantiated spell pierces and the Sour of Temptation, uh, over like things like Vapor Snag and maybe like Dizzy Spell, and I think like a cut of Greaves or something like that, or something else. I don't remember what I would cut. Maybe like trim like a Doppelganger or Stifle, whatever I felt like. But that matchup's really just about dodging him, so you kind of have to full force Spell Pierce, and then just kind of like out tempoing the threats. You can't really play a threat until about turn three, which is like really you can't even play a Delver on turn one if you're on the draw, because then you just get himmed, and that's just like that sets you back so bad. I really wanted to play cards like like deep analysis to like kind of offset the hymns, but they're like it's deep analysis is not super great on the front side, especially when I'm trying to kill my opponent pretty quickly. So I figured like Spell Pierce has a lot of different applications. It's really good, also really good against like Storm or other control decks where you're just kind of protect your threats. And like when Vapor Sag's bag, usually Spell Pierce is good. So that was good. The Sour Temptation was what a one of. It's also good against like the Delver matchups. I think I brought it in when into Delver and I just stole a Kiln Fiend because our decks are very similar. You kind of just like exhaust your options and eventually you just have the last thing. So whatever the last thing standing will typically win, and then when I take your thing, then I'm gonna win. So I never got to bring it up against other mid range decks. I didn't really play a ton of mid range decks, but you could still like a big fatty, and that's just really good. I think it'd be good, really good against like post. But it was my idea for like black red mid range where most of that matchup is about turns 1 to 3. They're just killing everything in sight, killing your hand, killing your threats, and then by the end of it, they're trying to recoup with like a Dark Dweller, a Goblin Dark Dwellers, or a Tectonic Giant. Steelix Tectonic Giant with this is pretty great. I really want to kill. I would really wanted to steal a Tectonic Giant, but that wasn't to be. The Unsubstantiates are basically more mana leaks. They're more like remans. They're remans mixed with unsummon, which is really strong. And I think in the Pain Dreadful sideboard, you really want like module spells. There's so many decks, things you can do in this format. So just having like module spells like this is really strong. So in some aspects, like it could be a counter spell or just a remand that just kind of buys you time. Or in other aspects, it's just a bounce spell where they've already played their threat and you can't counter it now. Because imagine just having like 16 counter spells and then they've already played the threat when you tapped out. Because you do tap out on occasion. So this is not like an instant speed like flash deck like things like with Fairy Vandal, Brightheart Cutthroat. So you need like interactive spells as well. So Unsubstantiate just I think filled that role. I had two to start, and then when I was really thinking really hard about the mid range matchups, I was just like, what do I want? What do I want to do? And it really came down to just like them like playing like big threats and then like wasting their whole turn. So if you could just like buy more time with like that with Unsubstantiate, I think that was really good. So I was really happy with this card in general. Tormod's Crypts and Nile Spellbomb. The split here is the Spellbomb can be found with Dizzy Spell, but you can't really find a Tormod's Crypt with that. But Tormod's Crypt bringing 0 is really strong, especially when you're playing Ponder and Brainstorm. So this is where the graveyard matchups. I actually had to play against Dredge at some point, despite the Animate Dead bug. But I mean, overall, it's really just for graveyard decks. Dredge, you can bring it in. I didn't do this, but you can bring it in against like aggro slide where they're trying to Zenith Flare you, but I think a better game plan there is to kind of spell pierce them out. But for most part, it's graveyard hate. I think in Pain Dreadful, you kind of need graveyard hate in some form or fashion. There's always a graveyard deck out there, and excuse me, you really can't be caught with your pants down. Tormod's Crypt being 0 is just really strong. It's just like a free spell you can play on turn 1. You can go like Ponder, find a Tormod's Crypt, play it, and now you're just set up for like so many turns. Rebuild's the only like specific hate against Affinity. Affinity is one of the scarier decks in this season. They have the ability of just like puking out like five cards in like a single turn in turn 1. So you really just need like a super comeback mechanic, and I think Rebuild is probably the best of it. The best part about Rebuild is that it cycles. It is kind of a non-bow with the Dreadnought Greaves plan, so just beware. But it is a good reset plan because you need to just buy some time. Usually the matchup, I think that Delver matchup's actually, or that Affinity matchup mostly about Delvers and Jins, and just kind of like mitigating the damage with like mitigating the cranial plating damage with like Vapor Sag and Unsubstantiate and Rebuild, of course. Bluster Squall's the last interesting card, I would say. It is a one drop, so you can find it with Dizzy Spell. For those mostly against the creature go white creature decks, Affinity, even I mean any actual creature deck really. Affinity, Heroic, Elves was like kind of a problem matchup, and sometimes you just want to fog them for a turn. It's a 1-mana sleep. That's the best way I can describe it. So you could tap a creature. You could just like fog. You can just fog a creature for a turn, or you can fog their entire board. I fogged down like Elves decks when they had like about 20 creatures on their side of the field with a single Bluster Squall, and it was just enough because they can't really beat a Tempest Gen. But yeah, I was really happy with this find. I wouldn't play a card like Sleep. I'd rather play this. It being instant as well can also be pretty good. Some people suggest Aetherize, but like I said, I think Bluster Skull is like it's another just module card. It like deals with one threat or deals with the entire board. So I was actually really happy with finding Bluster Squall, and I've overloaded a lot of spells in this draft period. I really like this draft. This is one of my favorite draft periods because I had a lot of fun with it. So, but yeah, that's the deck. It's a lot of fun. Hopefully you're watching this and going into the VOD. So enjoy the run. It was a lot of fun. But I is it like one of the best decks in the format? No, I don't think so. I actually think Black Red beats this pretty handily. I don't know really the best deck is. I think it's the best deck for me. I really like playing these like tempo, um, aggro tempo, control, whatever you want to call it, strategies, and just like I don't know, just it's really good if you think that everyone's gonna play like mono red or heroic or just sort of like any aggro deck that really can't kill a 12/12. But if you think everyone's gonna play hymns, then maybe I wouldn't play this deck. I would try to figure that out. But it was fun for me. I had a good time, and this was a really fun deck to play. And so if you like tempo strategies, if you like Delver decks with like crazy 12/12s, if you like kind of like manipulating that game plan, take this for a whirl. It's a lot of fun. I don't really have like enough any like updates or suggestions. Maybe the Sour is kind of like a flex slot. This is kind of an idea card. I was actually thinking of a cards like Captain's Last Word because like this thing doesn't flip a Delvers, but Captain's Last Word is like kind of the same thing. I kind of just wish I had Control Magic, but Sour is just as good, I guess. Um, I don't know what else you could try really, but you can play around the sideboard whatever you feel like. But I think the main deck is pretty solid. I wouldn't really change anything. The Spell Pierce could be a third dive down if you felt like it, but I think just like respecting the him matchups are really strong. So you want that. You could definitely like mix and match like the Spell Pierce dive down sort of splits. But yeah, that's it for me. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it. Probably the next deck text won't be until the next season. I'll try to get back to a normal schedule of making new content. But yeah, thanks for watching this now 27-minute video, and I hope you enjoyed the very long VOD. I'll put a link in the description below of the VOD, but if you're on the YouTube channel, just go look. If you're not following the stream, please follow the stream. I'm gonna try to stream more. I'm gonna try to get back to a sort of normal sort of streaming and content making schedule. So thanks for watching. See you later.